Welcome to another edition of Who's Better Baseball, the podcast where we talk about who's better in baseball. We have entered the stretch run of the season. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein, manager, editor at justbaseball.com. Joining me in a little bit is Patrick D. Lyons, our co-host, who's actually also hosting the Rockies Insider podcast and is working on getting an episode of that up. So I want to open up the conversation in the stream right now to talk about the MVP race and the fact that we have a chance for not one, not two, not three, four triple crowns. I mean, it's out there. There's a chance that in each league, in each race, we can see a triple crown, whether it's the MVPs, the Cy Youngs. Let's go through it. I think the most likely triple crowns this year are going to come from the pitching side of things. Right now, you look at Tarik Skubal. He is currently leading the American League in wins. Tie with Seth Lugo, though. So Lugo is right there. You look at ERA. He's currently got a big lead in the ERA column, 2.49 compared to Tanner Houck at 3.01, Seth Lugo at 3.02. Then you look at strikeouts. Tarik Skubal is also right up near the top of the league. You have him at 185, Cole Reagan's at 183, Garrett Crochet at 180. So you're seeing right now in the AL Cy Young race a huge opportunity for Tarik Skubal to actually win in all three of those categories and be the first triple crown since I believe Justin Verlander. And I'm happy to be joined here by Patrick D. Lyons. He's going to come on right now as he comes over from the Rockies Insider podcast. He's talking about these triple crown possibilities this year, Patrick. Mentioned the American League side. You got Tarik Skubal right now in line to potentially be a triple crown winner. You think he's going to be able to hold off these other candidates in those three categories?
Well, the counting stats always favor someone who's healthy, and we know how hard it is for pitchers to stay healthy in 2024. That's a big element to this, right? So it's really all about what he's able to do as far as his earned run average, because he's going to get the opportunity to win games. Harder to do when you're with a team at the bottom of the division like a Tigers, but even still, he's striking out hitters and he's been incredibly consistent. So there's going to be that possibility, and even if there is someone who's actually better than him ERA wise, are they qualified? So those are some of the components to this that I think probably factor favorably for him.
I think that the ERA, he's got a big enough lead that he's just got to hold on to it. And I think that's going to help him win the Cy Young for sure. The question's going to be, is he going to get the wins? That's the one I'm actually looking at with Seth Lugo tied at 14 on a better team. I mean, that's the – I almost think that we might need to evolve what the Triple Crown is for pitchers to not include wins at some point, whether it's maybe innings pitched instead, which he would have the lead there. Actually, no, Lugo has him by a wide margin. So I don't know. It's interesting how it might come down to that, where Lugo is on the better team that's going to be vying for a playoff spot down the stretch. All the Tigers really had to play for is Skubal, Cy Young, and I think that's a little bit easier, but the Triple Crown part, a little more difficult for them to finish that off.
So long as the Tigers don't start behaving like the Mets did whenever Jacob deGrom would take them out and just not be able to score runs, I think Skubal will be okay. You know, it's also important, I think, to keep in mind that the pitcher Triple Crown doesn't exist really. Like, okay, it's a thing, right, that we've kind of gone back and retroactively looked at and said, hey, wait a minute, there are three really key important stats for pitchers, and it's probably happened just about as frequently as the regular Triple Crown. I think it's happened maybe a little bit more frequently with pitchers being able to do that with wins, strikeouts, and ERA. But the thing that kind of works out really well as far as looking at pitchers, hitter, Triple Crown, and the hitting Triple Crown is that there is that factor that is not entirely up to you. Is your team going to win in your games? That's a little bit undecided by your performance. Same is true for hitters. Are your teammates going to get on base for you to drive them in, or are they going to be all solo home runs? So it definitely is a fun thing to keep an eye on. And, you know, in a year in which, at least for the National League, and we'll get to that in a bit, where there's been some debate if, you know, should the MVP go to a DH? Well, what if we get a pitcher that wins the pitching Triple Crown? We'll see if that changes the conversation.
Yeah, it would be interesting if that factored in. I think because we're seeing such, especially in the American League side, I think that Aaron Judge and Bobby Witt have risen above the pitchers, but even if Skubal got there, I don't think he'd get into the mix, but the National League conversation is more wide open. Shohei Ohtani is having a good season, a very good season. But as the DH only, like you said, that makes that race a little more wide open. I'm actually going to, you don't even know this yet, Patrick, at some point soon here, I'm going to have you and Kevin Henry hop on a show with me where I basically am going to put on a suit and tie potentially and present my case for why Francisco Lindor should be the MVP. I'm working on an article right now. It should be out, I believe, on Friday. But I think there's a case to be made for it. And part of it is how open that race is, which is where someone like Chris Sale, if he won the pitcher's triple crown and the Braves made the playoffs, maybe he could enter that discussion. And so let's get to that point there. Chris Sale on the NL side, he's got a bigger lead on the win front. He's got 2 wins more than Zach Wheeler and Dylan Cease. He's at 14 wins. Strikeouts, he is only 1 up on Dylan Cease. So that's the tightest race he's got. And then ERA, he's right there with Zach Wheeler at 2.73. Chris Sale's at 2.62. Then you have Hunter Green at 2.83. So he's got it right now. But can Chris Sale complete a triple crown this season?
Yeah, the interesting he absolutely can. Again, it's just going out there and doing your job in a year in which there are so many arms that are on the shelf. As we were saying, hey, Skubal, can he really get into the AL conversation? Doesn't seem that way with Judge and Witt. Can Sale do that in the National League in a year in which the best player is a designated hitter, which is strange enough since we're talking about the National League? But I don't know if him getting the pitcher's triple crown, which I think is very, very likely, in fact, for Chris Sale of Atlanta. But I don't know if that really even gets him into the top 5 of NL MVP voting. I think if you even go back to look at other pitchers who have won the pitching triple crown, his numbers don't necessarily, hang well historically with a lot of those guys in those seasons, especially if you're looking at the guys from the 90s, like the Roger Clemens and Pedro Martinez, Yohan Santana and Randy Johnson of the like. So it's a great season. It's the best I think that we've got right now in the National League as far as pitchers are concerned. But when you just compare what the position players are able to do, 7 days a week, 6 days a week, whatever it is, it's hard to make that same impact. And when it's not an overly dominant season, like an all-time historically dominant year, it just happens to be one of the best for 2024 because of so many guys being on the shelf.
Yeah, I think for Sale to actually be in the MVP race, it would have to be a case where his final 6-7 starts are all victories. He gets to 20 wins. The Braves narrowly make the play. Like all those things that they align. But it is interesting to look back at the last time there was a pitcher triple crown in a full season because Shane Bieber won it in 2020. You go back to 2011. It happened in both leagues, very similar to what could happen this year. You had Clayton Kershaw with the Dodgers and Justin Verlander with the Tigers. Kershaw, 2.28 ERA, 21 wins, 248 strikeouts. He did not win the MVP. Justin Verlander, 2.40 ERA, 24 wins, which I know we don't care about wins, but 24 wins is a lot. 250 strikeouts. He did win the MVP. So it just depends on what else is going on in your league. But it is pretty exciting to think that we could have, again, a triple crown winner in each league on the pitcher's front. It just shows you that those guys would be shoo-ins to be the Cy Youngs.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely helps with the conversation because, the win is not valued a ton. And, a lot of the rate stats are nice, but I think the best ability for any pitcher, any starting pitcher, is availability.
Yeah.
And if you're not available, it's fine to be able to go out and have 24 outstanding starts. Maybe 24 is a little even too high. But if you say 22 starts, and maybe that's where Paul Skeens ends up, and you say, man, no one has been better in baseball in 22 starts than Paul Skeens. Well, who's been better in start 23 through 32? And if you're going out there and posting in that way, like, again, look at what Zach Wheeler's been able to do. Like, that has a ton of value. We've got an article that I don't know if it's gone up yet today or is about to, about the Dodgers rotation and how Clayton Kershaw is their most reliable guy. Like he seemed like he was going to be this luxury, and now all of a sudden he's this necessity for them. So being able to actually go out there and take the ball every 5 days is something that I think people inside the game value a ton, but those on the outside, don't really count that as much. There's no statistic that really can maybe show you the value of going out there and taking the ball. I know we've got wins above replacement. So you're saying, hey, how much better are you than the guy in AAA that's getting the ball in your place? I don't know if wins above replacement can really calculate that to a T in the same way for a pitcher as it can for a position player.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where you look at these guys and their impact on the teams, and that's where they would enter an MVP conversation. But even just as Cy Young candidates, you want the guy that has been there, like you said, compared to just the guy that has the great rate stats. And Corbin Burns had that a couple years ago, but his rate stats were just so exceptional that eventually just had to say, all right, he deserves to win it. And I think there are cases to be made in those specific years where you do sort of throw out the innings pitch in the stars and say, okay, well, this guy was just so overworldly dominant. This season, when you look at a guy in Chris Sale who is not far off the innings total. I mean, if you want to get down to it technically, Logan Webb would have a Cy Young case because he's at 172 and 2/3 innings pitched compared to Chris Sale, who's pitched 30 innings less than him. And you look at the ERA, Logan Webb at a 3.13. But when you have Chris Sale with the ERA where it's at, the strikeouts where it's at, and of course the impact that he's had on the Braves, I think he's the Cy Young for sure. He's got to finish it off though still. And then when we go to the MVP race, the crazy thing is there's still some Triple Crown possibilities, not as likely. And like you mentioned before, the hitting Triple Crown, far more rare. Since 1967, only one, and that was Miguel Cabrera in, I think it was 2012. But Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge are guys that make the impossible happen, and they both got a shot at it. Let's start with Ohtani, since we were just in the National League. The funny thing is it could actually be Ohtani or Ozuna, because right now Ohtani's got home runs, 39 to 37. Ozuna has RBIs, 94 to 88. Batting average, Ozuna's got it at 309 to 291. So actually, Marcell Ozuna has a lighter lift at this point to be the second Triple Crown winner since 1967 and get over that hump. He's just 2 home runs behind. Let me actually start there. Patrick, if Marcell Ozuna wins the Triple Crown, how could we give Shohei Ohtani the MVP over him?
You can't. You literally can't. I mean, you could once you start throwing in stolen bases. Look, he's inventing new statistics each and every day. We know that. And so, will voters, do some of that mental gymnastics in order to give the award to Ohtani? No, I don't think voters will. The Baseball Writers Association of America, which I am a part of, full disclosure, they are a little more historical thinking. They are traditionalists in a lot of ways, but also there's nothing wrong with that to be a traditionalist. I think value is value, and certain intangibles. It's hard to put your fingers on those kind of things and say, oh man, this guy's exciting. Is exciting the same as value? Because we've seen a ton of players that are exciting that come and go and really have no value and don't have long careers. I mean, you remember Nyjer Morgan? Sure, an exciting and excitable player, but how long did his career really last? How valuable was he? Not very much. So as exciting as Ohtani can be, the value part of the most valuable player definitely favors Marcell Ozuna when you consider how many players have gone down for Atlanta, and a lot less so offensively, at least for the Los Angeles Dodgers. So when you throw in stolen bases, I think that changes the conversation. But when we were here in 2012 and it was Cabrera and Trout, a lot of the metrics favored Mike Trout, saying this should finally be his opportunity to win the MVP. The traditionalists of the BBWAA went with Miguel Cabrera in this historical season. So if Marcell Ozuna wins it in the National League for the first time since, I want to say, 1937, Joe Ducky Medwick of the St. Louis Cardinals, that's history right there. I mean, remember AL voters were going crazy for the fact that, well, Aaron Judge hit 62 home runs, and that's an American League record. All right, I guess if you're going to give him the award, not Ohtani, I think the same thing is going to be true here. If Ozuna can win an award for the first time in almost 90 years in the National League and win the Triple Crown, there's no reason anybody else should win the NL MVP.
I could not love the pull of Joe Ducky Medwick more than anything else. First, I'm learning of Joe Ducky Medwick, who was
Hall
also
of Famer.
nicknamed Muscles, so it could have also been Joe Muscles Medwick, but I think Ducky was the better pull for you when it came to the nicknames there. Yeah, the MVP race in the National League is so fascinating to me. That's why I'm writing the article about Lindor about it, because value to me with Francisco Lindor, and I'll talk about it more again as I had that article completely written, but it goes beyond just the stats. It goes to the fact that he has led that team that without him would be nowhere near this playoff race. And you could say the same thing for Marcell Ozuna. Now, I think there are some mental gymnastics that writers will go through in their heads to not vote for Ozuna because of the off the field stuff and not wanting to give him that vote. And the stolen bases are a great way to give Ohtani that edge, because you look at WAR, because of stolen bases and base running, Ohtani has a big lead on Ozuna. And one thing that could happen this year for Shohei Ohtani that's probably even more likely than a triple crown is a 50-50 season, which has never happened before. So if he gets to 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases and he's 11 away from both of them, he's got a shot to do it. It would take a good finish. That's probably going to weigh pretty heavily on voters' minds come voting season. But if that doesn't happen, if Ozuna gets the triple crown, this is where I can see Lindor sneaking in there, where it's, I don't want to vote for Ozuna. He had a better offensive season than Ohtani. Let's look at the top of the WAR leaderboard and we see Francisco Lindor as a friendly face. That's where I think Lindor can sneak into this race. I really do. But there's a lot that's going to play into this final stretch run of the season.
It's a perfect matchup because you do have two designated hitters, so that levels the playing field.
Yeah.
You just have to decide, is the first ever 50-50 season more valuable than the first triple crown in the National League in 97 years? That's a hard thing to figure out, but because of the historical significance of both of them, they kind of cancel each other out. I don't think it cancels each other out and leaves room for Lindor of like, oh, all of a sudden that doesn't count. No, I think it would be one of those two. But now all of a sudden, okay, they are pretty level. Now let's try to look at some of those other intangibles. Okay, Ozuna's been more valuable to Atlanta than Ohtani. Ohtani's been a better boy. He's been a good boy. At least we think. We have to get, we might need some updates from a certain courthouse to figure out how good of a boy he's been. But so far, it seems as if he's been a better boy than Marcell Ozuna. So it is strange, and I think voters they want every reason to vote for Ohtani, at least over Ozuna. They're going to vote for who is the most valuable, and Lindor I think has a lot of work ahead of him. But shoot, when you've got two historical seasons like we're on the precipice of for Ohtani and Ozuna, it's got to be one of those two guys. Sorry, Ketel Marte.
Well, yeah, Ketel Marte would have been in the article. It would have definitely been in this race, and still is to a certain extent. But he just hit the IL. I'm going to save the Lindor argument until I have all my stats primed and ready for you and Kevin, as I will try to sway to Baseball Writers of America into my favor on this one. I'm going to go on a whole tour this month trying to get Lindor an MVP vote here and there. But look, when it comes down to it, that's a race to follow here to see who ends up having the better DH season between these two guys. It's been really incredible to watch, and it's very close. I mean, I think we're so quick to say, oh, Ohtani's got a chance at a triple crown, and I was looking at those numbers before I realized Ozuna's like right there. So Ozuna actually is the guy that's got a better shot at it because he's got the lead by almost 20 in the batting average department. He's already got him in RBIs. It's just some home runs. We'll see who finishes the season hotter. In the other league, Aaron Judge, for a while we thought, all right, if Aaron Judge continues on his pace, he's going to win the MVP. Bobby Witt Jr. has said, hold on, I'm here too. And part of this is going to come down to a batting title that's up for grabs, because you look at the home run race. Aaron Judge at 47 home runs is 10 above Anthony Santander. He's going to lead the league in home runs. You look at RBIs. He's got 117. Jose Ramirez has 101. He's going to lead the league in RBIs. The only thing standing in the way of a triple crown for Aaron Judge is Bobby Witt Jr., who's also standing in his way from an MVP. Bobby Witt hitting 352, Aaron Judge 334. Can Judge close that gap, and will that be the deciding factor in who wins the American League MVP?
Yes. Yes, yes, and yes. You mentioned Bobby Witt Jr. having the better batting average as the point of which we're recording. Number three, so the guy who's right after Judge is 26 points away. So you're right. It's really all going to be about Bobby Witt Jr. and how well he can hit on the road, not at home. I mean, maybe it will be a little bit at home because dude's about to hit 400 at home. So if he can hit 425, that's going to make up for another 25 or so points on the road. But that's going to be interesting to see what happens. That we are going to be looking at batting average, and I don't know that Aaron Judge is necessarily going to be looking at batting average, but he's got the two of the more important legs, I think, wrapped up. And whereas, again, in the National League, they're all neck and neck, Ohtani and Ozuna. So it's going to be about batting average. And, Bobby Witt Jr., he's definitely playing that role of spoiler. And, I think a lot of people know the history between Kansas City and New York, Kansas City being considered and was once literally a minor league affiliate for the New York Yankees. And there was a time when Kansas City A's there and even the Kansas City Royals, they traded a lot of their best players to New York. And so, there's some history there. And I think a lot of people on the west coast of Missouri and Kansas City would love to see Bobby Witt Jr. play spoiler for Aaron Judge, who could still be in for a historic season, currently on pace for 60 home runs, hitting his 48th home run on Thursday. And who's he got coming up this weekend? The Colorado Rockies and a pair of left-handers. He hits lefties very well. Who's going on Sunday? Austin Gomber, 25 home runs he's allowed this year, tied for most in the National League. So he's going to have an opportunity to further extend that home run lead in the AL.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy to see where his numbers land because he might just clear 60 again. I mean, it's still 12 more home runs, but it's Aaron Judge. And if he has a big weekend against the Rockies, hits 3 of them out, well, all of a sudden that math just gets a lot easier for him. The case for Aaron Judge when it comes to MVP over Bobby Witt is just clearly the better offensive player overall. His OPS, it's 167 points higher right now. WRC plus, you're looking at almost 50 points higher. I'm sure after the home run today, probably 50 points higher. When you have a guy that, let's see if I can find the live WRC plus. Currently going in today was 223. After the game today, it's still at 223, but 223 WRC plus is absurd. For context, when he won his MVP in 2022, 207 WRC plus. So Aaron Judge is going to have the case based on just overall offensive numbers. But again, as voters had to measure value, they're going to have to look at the fact that Aaron Judge had Juan Soto on his team. Bobby Witt did not have a teammate that good. He's probably going to be 30-30 home runs, stolen bases. He's the best defensive shortstop in baseball by some metrics. It's certainly the best probably defender in the American League. That means something. And the WAR totals are at a dead heat coming into play today. So that's an MVP race that I think is going to be just awesome to watch on the stretch. And the fact that part of it is going to be Bobby Witt playing spoiler potentially to Aaron Judge's Triple Crown, that just adds another delicious wrinkle to it.
Yeah, I also feel good to know that we're not talking about Aaron Judge versus Gunnar Henderson, and that I put my money on the right guy. I put my heart and soul with the Bobby Witt Jr. over Gunnar Henderson, even though, hey, Gunner's looking to do his own thing with the Orioles. They're trying to win the AL East. But if you want to look at strength of schedule down the stretch here, the Royals have the third most difficult schedule remaining. You could be facing Tarik Skubal, Paul Skeens, Chris Sale, Phillies, Yankees still coming up. So that will also be fun seeing the Royals go head to head with the Yankees, who have the 24th hardest schedule remaining, AKA the 7th easiest. They got Rockies, A's, Nationals, Rangers, Pirates, and the Chicago Cubs. So Aaron Judge is still going to have a lot of opportunities to launch some souvenirs into the stands, both in the Bronx and on the road.